Hello everyone, and welcome to the first part of my Innistrad Midnight Hunt limited set review. I will be going through all the cards in this set and giving them a rating for limited play. I won't be commenting any constructed stuff, it's not really my strength. And I will also say something about most of the cards in addition to giving them a number rating. In this first part I will go through white, blue and black cards. First the commons from white, and then the uncommons from white, and then the rares and mythics from white, and then the same thing for blue and black. And the next part will go through the rest of the cards, and it will be publishing one day after this video. I also will make a third video before the set releases, which will cover the something like the kind of obvious archetypes and how maybe some certain cards can be valuable based on the specific archetype you are drafting, because there will be a lot of cards in this set that has value changing from borderline playable to a pretty good pick depending on your archetype, or at least that's how it seems to me based on the spoiler. I will be giving the cards a numbered rating from 1 to 5. 5 is the best one, unsurprisingly, which means basically bum rares. There could be some very good uncommon, but that's not really. Usually uncommons don't get the 5 rating, but 5 means the kind of card that will win you quickly the game, or is just somehow super efficient card and is not very situational. It's going to be a great card whenever you draw it, and also cheap enough that you will most often have mana to play it. 4 is covers a very well. It's also the kind of good and efficient cards that don't quite get the 5 out of 5 rating, and of course the kind of quality removal goes in that category, and most good uncommons get this rating because they are usually a bit. Well, I guess the best word to describe is to say that they are efficient cards. So you're getting very good value for your mana investment. 3 basically means the playables you don't mind having in your deck. It's also a card that you don't mind cutting from your deck. They are the kind of normal cards that your deck usually has. Most of these cards that have a rating of 3. 2 is a card that is still playable, but it's either very situational or just considering its mana cost, it's a bit too on the expensive side. But most often these cards are something like situational cards and not maybe that weak cards. 1 out of 5 is just unplayable in my opinion, and they are most often some built around cards for constructed purposes that you can't really reliably make to work. Make working in limited environment. Sometimes some commons go also to this category, but it's not really that frequent nowadays. With all that said, let's go and start talking about the cards. So first of all, here are the white commons. We have 29 of these. Blessed Defiance is a trick, which is, well, not great. I suppose you basically pay 1 mana to get a 1 mana flyer, get some amount of life, and you trade up a bit. It's an effect that if you are caring about the 1 mana flyer, sure you can play it, but it's not really a card I'm happy to play, so I'm gonna give this a 2 out of 5 rating. The Candle Grow, which is a 2 mana 2/2 with a Coven ability, so we right away see one of the mechanics of the set. Coven is always the same thing, except the condition is the same, but the effect varies card by card. So the Coven condition is that if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers. Now it doesn't have to be at the beginning of your combat. It can be whenever, when the spell resolves or something, but the important part is that Coven cares about you controlling at least 3 creatures that have different powers. And this will also affect the kind of the value of some cards in this set, because it might be beneficial to have different values for power. Anyway, this is a 2-mana 2/2 that can get flying. I would say this is the kind of 2-drop you are very happy to play. And if you are playing white, it's going to be rather easy to maybe get the Coven trigger happen, unless your opponent has a ton of removal. So I would give this like a 3+ out of 5. It's a 2-drop I'm going to be happy to pick, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a 4- rating. I will have this plus and minus to kind of indicate that, to give like a bit of a different values to cards, because some 3 out of 5 cards can be worse or better than some other 3 out of 5 cards. So that's why I can also use this plus or minus notation to kind of maybe vary the power like valuations a bit. So I'm gonna give this card initially a 3+ out of 5. Candle Trap is basically the white pacifism sort of removal. Enchanted creature has defender and prevent all combat damage this creature would deal. So basically you are making the creature a blocker that, if it has high toughness value, it can actually absorb some damage for multiple turns, or maybe it just jump blocks. But as that kind of a card, this would be like fine. But with the Coven ability, you get to exile it, and that's going to be pretty nice. So this is going to work as actual removal. Now, if you have the Coven active already, this is a 4-mana exile target creature, which is going to be good. But even if you don't have the Coven right away, this is going to work as a semi-removal at first, and then at some point you get rid of the card. I think this is a card. It's not premium removal, I don't think, because I'm not sure. It really depends on how easy it's to set up the Coven ability. If it is easy, this could be a premium removal. I'm still giving this a 4- for now, but it would maybe be bumped up to 4, or I don't know, maybe even 4+ if the Coven is really piece of cake to achieve. Cathar Commando is another 2-mana common 2-drop for white. I think white has 3 2-drops at common, which is also which is at least going to mean that it's easy to get curve outs with white. So it's a 2-mana 3/1 flash creature. That already is a bit maybe over the what we are a bit better than we are used to. But that said, a 2-mana 3/1 without abilities is not that amazing. So the flash it's of course a great upgrade, but it doesn't make the card sick or anything. But this has also the sacrifice ability where it can destroy an artifact or enchantment. So this is a premium 2-drop. I'm not sure if I like this more than the one that can gain flying, but this is definitely a 2-drop. You're always happy to play just to have your mana curve looking very nice. So I'm gonna give this a 3+ out of 5 as well still. Celestus Sanctifier. Okay, so this is the first card. It's not a werewolf, but this does introduce the day or night mechanic of the set, and it works so that when the game begins, it is not going to be it's not day or night. But then if some effect makes day or night happen, then there will always be day or night for the duration of the game. And the day or night mechanic will be active even if no permanent on the battlefield cares about it. And of course, the mechanic is so that if it's day, the player whose turn it is, if they don't play any spells on their turn, it will become night on the next turn. And if it's night, the player whose turn it is, if that player plays 2 spells or more during that turn, it will become a day on the next turn. So basically this Celestial Sanctifier makes it become day if it's not one of those conditions already. And then whenever, what I just explained happens, so day becomes night or night becomes day based on what the active player is doing with their spell casting, you get this ability where you get to look top 2 cards of your library. So this will happen always in the upkeep step, because that's when the trigger goes to stack. Because at the beginning of turn, and night becomes day or day becomes night, and the first point where when you can do anything. Well, basically, when the triggered abilities go to stack, is going to be the upkeep. So in the upkeep of the specific turn, you get to do this ability, which is doing, of course, two things. It's first of all slightly improving the quality of your draws, and then you are getting to put stuff on your graveyard, because this set of course has a graveyard theme, so it can be beneficial to have like flashback cards, or then the creatures that have their well, we will maybe see soon one of those creatures. Basically the flashback creatures. I don't just recall the mechanic name right now. Point is, this card is a 3 mana 3/2, which is like the baseline for a 3-drop, but it needs something else to be good. And this has, I think, a sufficiently reasonable ability that I might be happy to play this card. It's not, I mean, anything like too great, I don't think. I suppose it depends on how much graveyard stuff your deck has. Because if it has a lot, maybe this ability is actually better than it usually. But I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. Clarion Cathars. Well, this is a card which we have seen often, a 4 mana 3/3 that creates a 1/1 token. And this is good in this set because for Coven this gives you powers of 3 and 1. So you only need something else, a third creature that has power other than 3 or 1 to actually trigger your Coven. So I think this card will be I mean, even the baseline stats, it's always fine. It's not exciting for a drop, but it's fine. But in a Coven decks, which I mean, I don't think you have to have a Coven deck, but in a deck that has plenty of those spells that care, or permanents that care about the Coven thing, this is going to be a bit higher pick. But I will still say that it's pretty regular 4-drop, so I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. Flare of Faith. So a 2 mana +2/+2 pump spell at instant speed, very regular stuff. And if it's a human, it's a better version, bigger pump and indestructible. I would say that well, it's a giant growth that costs 2 mana even when it targets a human, but the indestructible is of course added bonus for that. But it's a trick. I mean, you can't really value these kind of tricks too high because they are always a bit situational. So I'm gonna say it's okay at what it does, but it's not a card I'm very happy to pick early. So maybe it's like a 2+ out of 5. Yeah, maybe if your deck has a lot of humans, it could be like a 3- or a 3 out of 5 in that case. A Gavonu Silversmith. Well, this is pretty good because, well, let's read. When this is a 4 mana 2/3, but when Gavoni Silversmith enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And first, what you notice, this also can target itself. It's not other. So all you need is one creature on the battlefield to get the full benefit from it. So a 4 mana 3/4. And then that also pumps one of your earlier creatures permanently. I think that's already good. And then of course you have the option to spread counters differently if you have more than one creature when you play this. And of course with this kind of counter, playing around with these counters is going to be excellent when you are trying to get the Coven triggers happen and what else. So I think this is, even without any Coven synergies, this card is pretty good for a 4-drop, and I would classify it as a 3+ easily, and it could maybe be even 4-, but let's say 3+ out of 5. Gavin Trapper, 1 mana 0/2 with a 2 mana tap ability. Now, normally this wouldn't be that good because when your creature has 0 power, it has no offensive capabilities whatsoever, and it can't even trade with any creature. All it can basically do, when we don't consider the tapping ability, is it can block a 1 power creature, and that's not good. And a tapping ability that costs 2 mana, it's going to be good in the mid to late game, but in early game this is a little bit too much. For example, on turn 4. If you had a 1 mana tap effect, you could play a 3 mana thing and then use a tapping ability, but using 2 out of your 4 mana is quite a lot. So this is going to be quite weak early in the game. But that would be in a normal, well, not normal, but in some other set than Midnight Hunt, because the point here with these 0 power creatures, and there are a few of them, is that they are excellent for the Coven ability. So this is zero power, so it will be most often a different power from your other creatures. So this is going to contribute to Coven often. So that's making this card a lot better than it would otherwise be. I would give this a rating of 3+ out of 5 for that reason. And maybe in a deck that has a lot of Coven, it can be maybe even slightly higher than that. Okay, so we have our first equipment, Hedge, which is Mask. 1 to play, 2 to equip for just +1/+1 is definitely not great. But it has an additional ability, can't be blocked by creatures with high power. Now, 4 power is going to be something not all decks are even going to have that much. But if you're playing against red or green, especially some werewolves, because they usually have quite a high power value, this can make some unblockability happen at some point. I would say that in best of 3, this is going to be better as a sideboard card. But for best of 1, I'm not that excited about it. But of course, the +1/+1 does help you to get the Coven triggers again. So you can move this around to make it so that you have 3 creatures with different powers. So it will work. I would say the best use for is a sideboard card in best of 3, and also in Coven heavy decks, it can be a fine main deck inclusion. But otherwise, I don't like this stat boost for an equipment. So I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5. Homestead Courage. Okay, +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains vigilance. Then it has flashback. Well, it is very cheap. You can get for 2 mana either 2 counters on 1 creature, or 2 different creatures get 1 counter. But it's not really an effect worth using a card on. Yeah, I understand it helps with Coven again, but this is just, I think it's a waste of a card. It's too weak for what it does. So I'm gonna say it's like a, I guess if you have a very aggressive deck and you can have a very fast curving out, yeah, let's say it's like a 2- out of 5. It's not the end of the world to play. It's not completely unplayable, but it's not a card I'm assuming to be playing. So for our first transform cards, well, it's not a transform card in the sense that it has disturb. So this was the name of the mechanic I didn't recall earlier. So let's see first what it does. So it's a 1 mana 1/1. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Now, that's not that great in limited, because 1 mana 1/1s, even if this gains some life, is not just worth it. It doesn't have enough board impact. But the Disturb ability says you may cast this card from your graveyard, transformed for its Disturb cost. So transformed means that we see the other version here. Now we have a 1/1 flyer with the same ability. And all these Disturb creatures, they have this clause that if it would die, well, no, if it would be, well, okay, the Luminous Phantom is gonna be Luminous Phantom only on the battlefield. It's not going to be the backside. Most of the time, it won't be. I mean, I don't think it can be the backside in your hand. So, for example, if you discard this card, it just goes to your graveyard, and then you can use the Disturb ability. It will be a 1/1 flyer. I'm still not sure if I like it. I mean, you can basically jump block with this guy, and then you get a 1/1 flyer. But I'm not a fan of the 1 power creatures that much when the ability they have is pretty unexciting in the end. So I'm gonna give this a 2 out of 5. I don't like this card. Morning Patrol, another with a Disturb, and this is, now we get something better, because the baseline is a 2/3 for 3 that has vigilance. Well, that's definitely bad, not worth it. But I mean, you either block with this jump block, even maybe in some cases, but maybe oftentimes you just try to trade this with something, or maybe you at least double block something so that you lose 2 creatures, they lose 1, but at least you can use the Disturb. So this has a useful Disturb. It's a 4 mana, because the Disturb cost is 4 mana, but you get a flying and vigilance creature that has 2 power and 1 toughness. So of course this kind of creature wouldn't be playable if that was all it does, but when you first get this 3 mana creature, and then at some point you can basically you get a 2/1 flyer for 4 mana that doesn't cost you a card, it's going to be decent. So I'm gonna say that this card is like a 3+ out of 5. I do like the additional card you get out of it. But it's still just a 3 plus because the initial card is not really that great. And the 2/1 flyer is not really that high impact either. A Ritual Guardian, another 3 mana 3/2, has a Coven ability where you get to. Okay, this thing gets lifelink. Well, a 3 power lifelink is definitely nice for raising. But 2 power for a 3 drop is always. There's always the issue that it can trade with 2 drops. And it's not maybe easy to. I mean, if the opponent has some 2 drops, it is often will trade with a 2 drop, which is kind of bad for your tempo. But then again, sometimes they don't, and if you get this lifelink happen, it's gonna be a pretty nice life gain out of nowhere. So I still think this is nothing amazing, even in decks that have easy way to trigger the Coven here. I'm gonna say it's maybe 3 out of 5 still. Search Party Captain is, well, this is nice. We have had 4 mana 2/2s, or we have also had 4 mana 3/3s that draw a card when they enter the battlefield. But this thing can be even a 1 mana spell. So this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature you attack with this turn. So I would assume this most likely will be like a 3 mana 2/2. I mean, in the early game, a 3 mana 2/2 that will draw your card. And sometimes it can be a 2 mana 2/2 that draws your card. And I like that quite a bit. And even if you just have to pay the 4 mana for 2/2, you always get to draw the card. It's not the end of the world. So I'm gonna say this is a pretty good card, and I'm not sure I'm gonna give this because it's just a 2/2, even though it gets your card back. I'm gonna say it's a 3 plus out of 5, but this could be. I might be undervaluing it. But I'm gonna say 3 plus out of 5. Soul Guide Griff is a 5 mana 3/4 flyer. Now those things are not nowadays that interesting anymore. But it has ability. It can exile a card from a graveyard, so opponent can have disturb creatures. They can have flashback spells or some other graveyard energy. So this can kind of disrupt opponent's plays a bit. And a 3/4 for 5, it's like okay. It's definitely not exciting, but it's playable. I'm gonna say it's 3 out of 5. Maybe 3 minus out of 5 actually, because 5 drops are something you just can't play too many in your decks. And yeah, I'm sure there are gonna be some other 5 drops, especially in higher rarities. You are more likely going to put to your deck. So this is not going to be a high peak because of the mana cost. And I'm gonna say 3 minus out of 5. Sun Gold Barrage, 3 mana instant, destroy target creature with toughness 4 or greater. Well, this is gonna be good against werewolves as the art shows here, because they will have a lot of big stats. Against some decks, that you might have some decks that don't have a lot of creatures or any creatures with toughness 4 or greater, and this is going to be of course miserable in those cases. So I like this more as a sideboard card in best of 3, and I would not play more than one of these in best of 1 because it's the risk that this is a dead card is an actual possibility. Now you get some good tempo advantage when you can kill some 5 or 6 drop with it, but the trade-off is that sometimes it can be against some decks it will be a dead card. So I'm gonna say it's going to be like a 3 minus out of 5. Thraben Exorcism, exile spirit creature with disturb or an enchantment. Well, I didn't check the numbers, how many spirits and creatures with disturb there are, and there are some number of enchantments, but I'm gonna say this is unplayable in. And currently I'm gonna say it's unplayable in best of 1. There are too many decks that won't have any of this stuff, or perhaps only like a very few of that stuff. But maybe spirits are across all the colors. I think it's a blue-white mechanic though, but well, like I said, I didn't check the numbers, but it seems it's unplayable in best of 1 and an excellent sideboard card in best of 3. But let's say it's a 2 out of 5 in best of 1 and like a 3 out of 5 in best of 3 when you can pick it for your sideboard. Unruly Mob is the last 2 mana, a 2-drop common creature for white, and it is it is, let's say, not consistent, because sometimes it becomes like a 5/5. Sometimes you draw this late in the game and it's not really going to become that big. So what is the average case? I would assume that because you need the one counter first before this card does anything. A 2 mana 1/1 would be horrible, but of course creatures are going to die. Of course, this only cares about your creatures dying, but anyway, they are mostly going to die in a limited match. So I would say that it's not that hard in the average case for this thing to become a 2/2 quite soon, and a 3/3, or maybe bigger potentially later in the game. So I don't think this is the kind of 2-drop I would pick over the other 2 common 2-drops, because they are just more consistent. But this is still a card that can snowball out of control even. But the inconsistency, because the possibility of this just being a 2 mana 1/1 it's kind of is scary to me. I don't want to give it any too high of a rating. I think I will give it 3- out of 5. It's a playable 2-drop, but I would pick the other ones over this. Okay, I wasn't going to do any artifacts here. I'm not sure why. Oh yeah, okay, I guess my search criteria. Yep, I'm not gonna go through these. I go to white uncommons right now. Yeah, it was because of my search criteria. Anyway, let's not care about the artifacts. Ambitious Farmhand is the first white uncommon with a Coven, and it can be transformed with the Coven ability. So it doesn't have disturb or anything. You have to transform it with this ability. A 2 mana 1/1 gives your planes. Well, it's not bad. I mean, definitely planes is going to be somewhat useful, except in the games where you are flooding out hard. But in a fairly, I would say, in a fairly fair number of games, you are going to benefit from the additional land you get here. But the point is that when you get to have the Coven transform, you're going to get a 3/3 lifelinker for 3 mana. This is only one white to transform it. So, I mean, I'm assuming you are going to get the Coven happen at some point, and you get a pretty nice creature. A 3/3 lifelinker is definitely good. So I think this is pretty high value card, and I'm going to give it a 4- out of 5. Beloved Beggar is a disturb card, uncommon 04, which for 6 mana becomes a 4/4 Flying Vigilance. Normally I wouldn't care about it, but the 0 power can be useful for your Coven stuff. So index with Coven, and based on these fight cards, Coven is quite common for white. So you are most likely going to have some Coven effects in your white deck. So I'm gonna say this is pretty decent in that regard. But of course, your deck must not be very aggressive, because an 0/4 for 2 is not what an aggressive deck wants. This is very good in a controlling deck when you eventually get a 4/4 flyer out of this thing, and in the meanwhile you can just block stuff with the 0/4. So it's a deck dependent card, but I would say yeah, well, it basically the value ranges from 2 to, I guess, like a 3 plus, maybe even. Well, maybe not, maybe 2 to 3, depending on the deck. All right. How do you say this word? Bereaved Survivor. Okay, that's how I say it. It's a card that has a backside, and all it needs to do to transfer is that another creature you control dies. But first you are paying 3 mana for a 2/1. That's bad. So let's see what happens when it transforms. Okay, it transforms into a 3/2. So basically you're paying 3 mana for a 3/2. But when this thing attacks, return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. Okay. Well, I would say, because these kind of effects, when it returns tapped and attacking, it's often quite easy for the opponent to just block so that the attacking creature dies and their blocker does not. but it is kind of free. I mean, well, it is free. You don't have to pay anything for this ability. So you're paying 3 mana for a 3/2. It shouldn't be that problematic to have another creature die to transform this thing. But I don't think it's super high impact. So I'm gonna give it like a 3 out of 5 only. Borrowed time. So when this thing is this just a banishing light or what else it is? Well, this is, I mean, this is the white uncommon removal we often see. Exile until this thing leaves a battlefield. So basically, until the opponent can get rid of the enchantment or maybe bounce it, you just exile a non-land permanent with this thing for 3 mana. It's of course very good. So I'm gonna say it's 4 out of 5. Very universal removal. And Cathar's Call. 3 mana aura. Enchant creature. Creature has vigilance and okay. Well, this is So basically, you're getting free 1/1 tokens, which is of course great. Except if your opponent kills the creature, you lose the aura and the creature it was enchanting. So the vigilance, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that relevant. Of course, sometimes it is, but it's not the greatest of the keywords. If it gave like flying or lifelink or something like that, or first strike or something like that, it would definitely be a lot better. But well, you are mostly going to get at least 1 token because you don't really want to play this into open mana. So at the beginning of your end step, so yeah, the turn you cast this, you get the token, and if the creature gets to survive, you will get 1 human token each in each end step. But I'm gonna say that I just think it's way too risky. The 1/1 token is not worth the 2/1 the opponent gets if it kills the enchanted creature. So maybe as a sideboard card when you know your opponent doesn't have a lot of removal. Yeah, I'm gonna say this is like a 2 minus out of 5. Yeah, it's way too risky. And it's also very slow. I mean, you're gonna get a 1/1 token that's gonna attack on the next turn, and well, usually a 1/1 is not very good in attacking, so it's a very slow. I mean, you could, I guess, win the game if this gets you tokens for like 7 turns and opponent can't do anything, but that's gonna be rare. Chaplain of Alms. So this is a disturb card. So you get first a 1 mana 1/1 first striker with ward 1. Don't know how relevant the ward 1 is for this thing because I doubt the opponent wants to target this with anything. But I suppose that's there, so be it. Disturb. So, well, first, of course, the 1 mana first striker is not going to be worth a card. But let's say this dies usually by jump blocking maybe, and you get a 4. It was 4 mana. Yeah, the disturb cost is 4 mana. You get a flying first strike, and each creature you control has ward 1. Okay, well, this giving this ability to all of your creatures that can mess up with opponent's tempo a bit because every spell they use to target your creatures is going to cost basically 1 extra. And a 2/1 flying first strike creature, it's not that bad. Yeah, I like this a lot more than the life gaining thing that was common, I think. That becomes a 1/1 flyer. I think this is worth playing, but not maybe too exciting. So let's say it's like a 3. Let's say 3 out of 5. A dual craft trainer. Okay, 4 mana 3/3 first strike. Well, that's already pretty good. Coven. Target creature you control gains double strike. So it's not only itself, but it can target itself. But it can target something else too, like a evasive creature or one with more power than 3. Okay, that's pretty good. A 4 mana 3/3 first striker is gonna, first of all, as a blocker, I'm almost surprised this is as an actual first strike and not like only first strike when it's attacking or first strike when it's your turn, because we've seen those a lot lately. But because a 3-power first striker on the defense basically means opponent can't attack with creatures that have at most 3 toughness unless they are willing to, lose the creature. This is a very good blocker. And even as an attacker, it's not bad. I mean, it's a 4 mana 3/3, and the Coven ability, it's very good. I'm gonna say this is like a Well, it really depends on how easy the Coven is going to be, but I'm gonna say it's at least 4 minus out of 5. Gavony Dawn Guard. 3 mana 3/3, hard to cast with double casting requirement for the white, but still ward 1. So it's gonna make it a day if it's neither day or night. And then whenever day becomes, okay, well, the stuff that we already know about. This is a mechanic also, so not only the werewolves care about their day or night, but there's also these kind of cards that care about day becoming a night or vice versa. So this says, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with, well, cheap one, get it to your hand. Okay, so this thing actually can draw you cards. And it's a 3 mana 3/3, even with a ward 1. Yeah, it seems pretty valuable. I would say that you will have around maybe even close to 10 creatures with mana value of up to 3. So this is going to hit creatures often enough. I'm gonna say it's a 4, maybe 4. It's a 3. Let's say 4 out of 5. Well, 4 minus, maybe 4 minus out of 5. Loyal Grief. Flash 2/2 flyer, so basically a wind drake stats 2/2 flying creature. But the flash is of course, well, always gonna be somewhat nice, but in this case it has this saving ability, so when it enters the battlefield you can return another creature you control to its owner's hand, and of course the main utility here is that you can basically save your creature from removal. You will have to of course use mana to recast it, but you still basically make opponent waste the removal spell. And another option is to, of course, trigger some leaves battlefield or enters battlefield abilities. And then you can have like a jump blocker, and you can, assuming it's not blocking a trample creature, you can return it and jump block again with it, which can be relevant. And all this is tacked into a 3 mana 2/2 flyer. And you don't have to, it says you may return another creature. So it's completely, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. So I'm gonna say it's pretty good value, and it's, in my opinion, going to be like a let's say maybe like a 3+, very strong 3+ out of 5. Odric's Outrider, 4 mana 2/4. When this when this or another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Okay, so as a 4 mana 2/4, it's definitely not good stat-wise, but it will always give a counter, well, unless it gets exiled or something, but often a creature leaves the battlefield by dying. So the thing is that this also works with your other creatures. So this can be a pretty good engine, creating +1/+1 counters, and it can even target itself. So yeah, it seems like humans want to die, or white cards want to die a lot in this set. I'm just wondering about what the grading I'm gonna give it to, because this can be sometimes the 4 mana 2/4 that does nothing else than be a very too expensive creature for the stat line, and then sometimes it's just going to make the opponent's day miserable because you are gonna get +1/+1 counters left and right. So what is the kind of average score? I'm not going to say this is like a high peak, but it can really do some good stuff. So I'm gonna say it's a 3 out of 5, could be a 3+ out of 5. A Ritual of Hope, 2 mana instant. Okay, pump spell for the team, but a small pump, but with Coven it's going to be +2/+1 for your team, and that's a big difference from the +1. It makes your creatures able to trade a lot better, and of course the damage output will be higher too. It seems like it's an unplayable card almost in decks that don't get the Coven ability happen, but in decks that can get it pretty reliably, because you don't even want to cast these kind of effects unless you have a lot of creatures. So all you need to have that when you have a lot of creatures that they have, varying values for the power. And if you can do that, I think this guy is going to be a pretty good card for aggressive decks. I'm gonna give it like a, well, assuming you get the Coven thing happen. Otherwise, don't pick it. But if you can get a common thing happen and you are an aggressive deck with a lot of creatures or creature tokens, it's going to be a 3+ out of 5, maybe even 4- out of 5. Sunset Revelry or Revelry, 2-mana sorcery. Okay, so this thing does stuff, but how many of these 3 things have to happen for it to be good? Okay, so you can get 2 tokens, you can draw a card, you can gain life. Okay, so basically the second and third options, well, not options, but the mode, well, not mode, so, but effects, let's say, second and third effects are worth a card. I mean, of course, it's not great to just get the 2/1 tokens if it's all it does, but it's still okay. And if you only get a card, I mean, it's actually gonna be a bit miserable. But given that you can get the main idea is that you can get 2/1 tokens and a card, and that is very good. And the life is like it's nice to have the option here. But the important thing is you want to get 2 tokens and a card. Now, how often your white decks are going to have less creatures than the opponents? That's another thing. And if you are playing some aggressive white decks, you might not have. No, actually, no, that was wrong. It is good because then opponent is more likely to have more cards in hand than you. So yeah, actually, yeah, because I think the card draw is going to be somewhat easy to make happen. And you can, of course, try to deploy your threats in a way that you get also the 2/1 tokens. Yeah, it seems a card I definitely want to try. I'm gonna keep it for now 3+ out of 5, but that can change to either direction. And now we get some artifacts which I don't want to cover here. Let's see the white rares now. Adeline Resplendent Cathar. Okay, 3-mana star power 4 toughness. So of course we see soon what is the power. Power is equal to the number of creatures you control. So of course it's always 1/4 because you're going to have at least 1 creature when it's on the battlefield. Whenever you attack, it has also vigilance. For each opponent, so in Magic Arena, especially in drafts, it's going to be 1 opponent. Create a 1/1 token that's attacking that player or a planeswalker take control. So this is going to attack as well. It's going to get 1 additional power, and yeah, the opponent will have easy time, of course, killing the 1/1 token. But the point is, for a 3-drop, this has 4 toughness, and it's not going to be that hard to have several creatures here. So this can be like a 4/4, 5/4 even. So this is a really, really cheap card for the stats it's going to most often have. I think it's easily a 4 out of 5. Brutal Cathar, 3-mana 2/2. Okay, this is a werewolf. Oh, white has werewolves. I didn't actually pay attention when I skimmed over the spoiler. So anyway, 3-mana 2/2 werewolf. So this has daybound. So this is the first card with the daybound, and every daybound card has a backside with a nightbound. So the point is, when this thing enters the battlefield, if it is neither day or night, it doesn't say it here, but it's how it works. When it enters the battlefield, if it is neither day or night, it will become day. And then if it is already day or night, well, then it becomes, I mean, if it is day, it will come with front side up. If it is already night when this enters the battlefield, it will actually enter transformed in that case. So nightbound and daybound creatures always have the relevant side, corresponding side up, depending on the state of the day-night status. All right, so let's assume these things will enter when it's day or when it's neither, so it's gonna be day when it's enter. So it's gonna have enter with front side up, because these are almost always going to be better on the back side. So if this enters when it's night, so you're gonna get, let's see, a 3-mana 3/3 first striker with a ward of the pay 3 life. That would be a fantastic stat line, but it's gonna be a 3-mana 2/2 most of the time. So, well, Okay, so this is actually, I mean, you don't necessarily want this to enter as the Moonrage Brute, because even though I just said it's going to be better at the backside, but this actually, when this enters with the front side up or transforms oh, into this thing, yeah, you get to exile a creature until this creature leaves battlefield. And the thing is, this actually can exile multiple creatures when this, day becomes night and so on, and night becomes day. So this is just banishing a creature until this dies. Well, it's of course fairly easy to kill a 2/2 or a 3/3, but it's still, I mean, good value for what you pay here. I'm gonna say it's a 4 out of 5. Curse of Silence. Um, so I think each color has one rare curse, at least. Okay, enchant player, of course, because it's a curse. Choose a card name. Yeah, well, this is just well, I suppose it's a sideboard card for best of 3, but really, really narrow one. But I guess if opponent has like a nice rat effect, you might want to make it harder for them to cast it. But it's really, because when this enters the battlefield, you don't get any card. This is just, you're gonna waste a card to prevent an opponent casting a card that they may or may not have in their hand. It's just, I mean, don't really play this, and I doubt you ever gonna want to use this as a sideboard card. But I suppose that's like a remotely possible. It's a basically 1 out of 5. All right, Enduring Angel, first mythic rare, I think. All right, so you get a 5 mana, which is a triple caster though, so you better have a lot of white sources in the deck. But a 5 mana 3/3 double strike, flying, you have hexproof. Don't know how relevant that's gonna be. But the point is, the stat line is of course great. This is hitting for 6 in the air, so that's great. If your life total would be reduced to 0 or less, this thing transforms and your life total becomes 3. All right. So the last part is just covering the situations where uh, not in limited but in constructed, you may make, for example, a token copy of this card. The token copy can't transform, so you're gonna lose the game, because otherwise you would just never go to 0 life. So this is just to make sure this is a fair card. All right, so we don't have to care about this last bit in limited, but it is definitely relevant that it can save you from death once. So that's already pretty good. And then you get a hex. Well, again, you have hexproof. This is gonna fly, and this has power and toughness each equal to your life total. So it will have 3 power and toughness first, but whenever this thing attacks, double your life total. So you're gonna, basically, if opponent can't drop you below 3, it's gonna you're gonna go to 6, and this is gonna be a 6/6, and then it's gonna be a 12/12, and so on. So this is obviously a bomb rare, and I'm gonna say it's a 5 out of 5. Fateful Absence. Destroy target creature or planeswalker for 2 mana and instant speed. Each controller investigates. This is going to be interesting for constructed. The investigate is, of course, giving the opponent a card, but it's a lot different from just drawing a card, of course, because you will they will have to use 2 mana for it. So I would say that usually this is going to be worth it. Them having to pay 2 mana to draw a card might be a small price for the fact that you have such an efficient removal spell. I'm gonna say this is a 4 out of 5. Intrepid Adversary. Okay, yeah, this you get a 2 mana 3/1 lifelinker, which is obviously great, and then you can pay 2 mana any number of times when it enters. So creatures it gets that many valor counters. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each of these counters. That counts itself. So this is a 4 mana 4/2, 6 mana 5/3 lifelinker, and so on. And it will also pump your other creatures when you paid at least 4 mana for it total or more. So, well, it's just a great card. You don't even want to use this on turn 2, but it's an option that's there. If you need to curve out, you can do it, but you would rather use the Anthem effect here, pump your team, and I think it's a pretty strong card, but maybe not quite a bomb rare. I'm gonna give it a 4+ out of 5 because it's still fairly easy to get rid of. I mean, a lot of the a card doesn't have to be hard to get rid of to get the 5 out of 5 rating, but this is only a ground guy. Compare it to the lifelink, the double strike angel here. This is also easy to get rid of. It's only a 3/3, but this is hitting for 6 in the air. This guy is easy to block, so you might not even, most of the time you won't even attack with this. So the lifelink won't be that beneficial in those cases. But it is a very strong effect, so I'm gonna say 4+ out of 5. Sigada's Splendor. Okay, so 4-mana enchantment that can draw you cards and gain you life. So at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if your life total is greater than or equal to the last noted life total. So the important part is that greater than or equal, so you don't have to gain life for this to draw your card. But you will gain life if you cast white spells. So basically, if your opponent won't be able to deal damage to you, this will always draw your card at the beginning of your upkeep, which will be nice if the game goes long. It is a 4-mana enchantment, so it doesn't do anything at first. And the point is that you will always know the life total. So this is not so what we say an intervening if. This is not such an effect. So this will always trigger. So draw a card if your life total is greater than or equal. So even if you at the beginning of your upkeep, your life total is not greater than or equal to the last noted life total, this ability will trigger go to stack, and then the note your life total part will always apply. So even if the opponent was able to attack you and you go to a lower life total than the last noted one, you will note it again. And then you have another opportunity to maybe stay at that life total and then draw a card on the next turn. So it's gonna be a slow card drawing engine with a bit of life gain tacked in. Not a bomb rare or anything, but it can be pretty good. It's tough to say. It's like a 3+ or 4-. It seems to me. It depends on how easy it's for you to get this kind of defensive deck. I bet some other white red maybe is not the best, or maybe I don't know. Actually, I will see when the set gets, when we get to draft the set, but it's hard to say now. But a defensive deck that can hold defenses up is going to win based on this card easily. But an aggressive deck or a deck that is facing an opponent who has a lot of evasive creatures, it might just not be doing anything in the entire game. You just have a 4-mana card that does nothing. That's the worst that can happen, and it can happen if the opponent has evasive creatures. So 3+ or 4-, depending on your deck. Then we have a Sigadian Savior, 5-mana 3/3 flying. A mythic rare, not anything like no lifelink, no double strike. It's just a 3/3 flyer for 5. So that stat line is bad. But when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, or if you cheat it somehow, it doesn't work. But well, you will be casting this in limited most of the time. Return up to 2 target creature cards with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is not insane. You get 2 2-drops or 1-drops. But yeah, it's still, even if you get a 1/2 drop and you get a 5-mana 3/3 flyer, it's gonna be good in that case, because a 3/3 flyer for 5 mana is like almost playable. It's not quite, so it doesn't need that much. And you getting at least one creature, even if it's just a 2-drop, is going to be good enough. And I suppose you are often going to be able to get 2 creatures as well. So I'm gonna say this card is in the end a 4 out of 5. Sungold Sentinel, 2-mana 3/2. Okay, well that's no joke for a stat line. 2-mana 3/2 is really good. Whenever this thing attacks or enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target card from. Okay, so this just hates opponents' graveyard stuff. It's a very good ability in this set, I'm sure, because flashback, disturb, and whatever else there might be. is going to be relevant to get to exile those cards. So that's not even all. Common, choose a color. This thing gains hexproof from that color and can't be blocked by creatures of that color. So it's like almost a protection, but not quite. But with the combination of hexproof from that color and that the opponent can't block with those creatures, it's very close to protection. It doesn't do exactly this all the same than protection, but point is, this is really good. And this is not even. Does it say activate only once? No. You can activate it as many times as you want if the common requirement is met. So even if your opponent has like 2 colors of creatures, you can use 4 mana to make this unblockable. Yeah, this is very good. I mean, it's such an efficient card. I'm gonna say it's a 4+ out of 5. I mean, do I want to pick this over premium removal? I mean, it feels like I do. It's such a good 2-drop and so easy to make unblockable and fairly cheap. Now, you have to meet the requirement of the common, but I don't think it's going to be that hard. Well, at least a 4 out of 5. Vanquish the Horde. Yeah, the set has at least 3 Wrath effects if I recall correctly. One of them is a mythic rare, 2 of them are rares. This is the one of the rares. The Wrath effects in limited are kind of annoying because you shouldn't play around them, because if you play around them and you are like a bit ahead, opponent can just play their own creatures and stabilize, whereas otherwise you would have won. But if they are holding one of the rats, you just lose your board. Maybe they have more cards in their hand than you, and you will just lose a game. But anyway, that's the only way to give rat effects for constructed, to print them in standard legal sets. So we have to live with them. So this is of course a pretty good rat effect, because this is an 8 mana card that is gonna be 5 and 4 quite often when you are gonna play this. For each creature on the battlefield, I mean, maybe they have like 1 and you have 2 or 3. This is gonna be a 5 or 4 mana card. Destroy all creatures. So I don't personally like rats because I usually try to just get to the board, and this is of course completely unplayable. I mean, uncastable basically when you have more creatures and you are the one applying pressure. This is going to be good if the opponent is having a better board position than you. And the game plan of like you draw a rat, well, maybe I don't do anything on my turns. That can backfire also. So it's not really, opponent will also realize that if you're not doing anything on your turns and you have white mana available, they're gonna be like, okay, they have 2 creatures they can attack for, let's say, 4 or 5 damage with those creatures each turn. You are gonna have to do something to their 2 creatures, and then you're gonna get like a, I don't know, 2 for 1 with this maybe. Well, it would be also a 6 mana brat in that case, but point is, it's not a universally good card that always gonna be great when you draw it. It's gonna be great in some specific situations. I'm gonna therefore, and this is maybe my personal opinion, and some other people may value these kind of effects differently, but I'm gonna say this is only a 3+ out of 5. I'm not going to first pick this over premium spot removal, for instance. It's going to be better in very controlling decks, but I'm not sure if that's going to be easy to draft, like decks with a lot of card draw and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm gonna say it's 3+ out of 5. And that was the final white card. Let's go to blue commons. So this is going to take a long time. I'm talking a lot more than I initially figured. Well, let's just go forward now. I will try to be a bit faster now. So the first blue common is a bait hook angler. 2 mana 2/1. Well, basically bad stat line for a 2-drop, but it has to disturb, which is gonna give you a 1/2 flyer. So this is, I think, a playable 2-drop that you hope to trade with something, and then you get like a small flyer which does something. Not a great one, but I would say it's like a maybe 3 out of 5, 3- out of 5. Component collector, homunculus. So first of all, this makes a day happen if it's not night already. And you can tap or untap non-land permanents. Yeah, well, that can be useful. Basically, this happens whenever day becomes night or night becomes day. That happens in upkeep. So when it's the opponent's upkeep, you get to tap a non-land permanent they have. So usually a creature they're gonna attack with. And if it's your turn, well, I mean, it's tap or untap. Of course, you can untap your own stuff. And when it's your turn, you're gonna tap. Well, I mean, usually untapping your stuff won't be that useful at that point in the turn, but you can tap something the opponent has that they might, otherwise block with. So it's not that bad, but it's a 3 mana 1/4, so you have to be interested in this stat line. The ability alone is not really worth a card, but if you care about this defensive stat line, then it's good. So it depends on your deck needs, and I would say it's like a 2 out of 5, 2, 3 out of 5, depending on the deck. Consider this is upped with arguably better mode because you get to put the card in your graveyard if you don't want to keep it on the top instead of bottom of your library. Well, of course, this set has graveyard synergies, but that's not all. Instants are important in this set when you have a day-night stuff happening, and because if you want a day to become night, you can't cast spells on your own turn, and that's where instants come into play. So you can do still, you don't have to, not use your mana at all if you use instants on your opponent's turn. So if you have day-night stuff going on, consider it's going to be better in that case. Otherwise, it's just a 1 mana cantrip which does improve your draws a bit, can dig into your bombs or something like that, but it's not really a card you usually have room for in your deck. Most of your cards in the deck should be cards that affect the board state, so creatures removal. They are the main things that do that. So usually when you are cutting cards, stuff like Consider are easy cuts from a deck. But anyway, this can be useful if you have a day-night stuff going on. Alright, Devious Cover-Up, if it's a reprint, counterspell, good against Disturb and Exile. Sorry, the flashback stuff, because this exiles the card. You don't have to see them casting the other half of the card, but of course this counters any spell. But 4 mana counter spells are of course extremely bad, because it's so much mana to keep up. But you may shuffle up to 4 target cards from your graveyard into your library. If you have a very, very, very defensive deck, a control deck, you can actually benefit from the shuffle ability. You can just make your remaining deck, you get to draw your best cards again that you have already used in the game. So I could see this has some use in a control deck, but this is not a universally playable card. It's basically like a 2- in decks that don't specifically aim for the very long game. It can be like a 3 out of 5 in decks that can aim for the long game. Drownyard Amalgam. Okay, so 5 mana 3/6 is a very good blocker, and target player mills, so you can mill the opponent. I'm assuming you most often want to mill yourself, because unless you are really going to make the opponent take out, because even if you don't have yourself anything that benefits, any graveyard synergies opponent might have, and you don't want to give them any free value that way. Point is anyway that it's a very good blocker, expensive though, but for only 3 mana you can clock them for 3 per turn. I think it's okay, because usually when we have had these kind of effects, it could be like a 5 or 6 power creature, but it costs like 6 or 7 mana to activate this thing. Now this is something you can do later in the game while you are also casting other stuff. And of course, if this attacks, it can't be a blocker. So, but I mean, sometimes you just don't need a 3/6 blocker, and you can clock them for 3. And a 3 power unblockable creature is no joke. So it's interesting card, because on the other hand, it's just a 5-drop. You don't have room for many 5-drops in your deck. But this is one that is, I think, a good one. So I don't know. Let's give it a 3- out of 5. Falcon Abomination. 3 mana 2/2. When it enters, create a zombie with Decayed. I'm gonna talk about this maybe a bit more in the video. I'm planning to make after this 2-part set review, because the Decayed zombies can be pretty good or they can be pretty useless. Now, they can't block, and when they attack, they have to be sacrificed at the end of combat. So you can think of this as a when you don't have any synergy, they are just 2 damage to the player, and that assumes they can't even block it beneficially. So the best it can do is 2 damage to the player. So if you had a card that says 3 mana 2/2 flyer, opponent loses 2 life next turn, it's like it's still okay, but I mean that's only when they can't even block the zombie. So what I'm trying to say here is don't think this as the same thing as getting like an actual token without decayed. Anything that can jump block or can attack for multiple times is going to be better than a 2/2 decayed zombie. So I'm saying that a 1/1 regular token is going to be better than a 2/2 decayed token. That said, you are not paying much extra. You're getting a 3 mana 2/2 flyer. So this card is still good. And the more synergy you have this, so the synergy can be effects that tap your creatures as a cost. The set has those, and especially things that make you sacrifice creatures for a cost. That's gonna be great with the zombie tokens. So this, how useful this thing is, it depends on the synergy you have for the zombie tokens. So I'm gonna say it's like a goes from 3- to I guess 3+ out of 5. Flip the switch. So 3 mana counter spell, unless they pay 4. Well, that's going to be an actual counter spell for until it's very late in the game. They don't often have 4 mana to do to pay for extra, and you will always get the decayed zombie. But the same applies as for the above card. It really depends on the amount of synergy. 3 mana counter spells, I'm not a big fan of them. I don't think they are that great. But again, if you have some day-night synergies, you might want to keep mana up anyway for the opponent's turn. So this could be better in a deck that you care about day switching to night. So it can be useful, but I would say that the average case for this thing is like a 2 out of 5. And then if you have synergies or day-night stuff, yeah, this can be like a 3 out of 5. Gale Drifter is a 4 mana 3/2 flyer with Disturb. So this is just a French vanilla, so no other ability text than some evergreen keyword. A 4 mana 3/2 flyer is not great nowadays, but let's see the Disturb. You are going to get a 5 mana 2/2 flyer when it dies, so that's, I think, it's valuable. So you don't mind, because sometimes you have to trade these things with opponents at 2 drops or 3 drops, and you will losing your flyer, but because you are not winning the race, you have to block with your flyer. Now in this case, you can trade with something and still get a 5 mana 2/2 flyer that doesn't cost you a card. So I would say this is a pretty easy 3 out of 5, maybe even a 3+ out of 5. Geist Wave, 2 mana bounce. Oh wow, I do like this though, because you can save your own permanent, or for whatever reason draw a card by bouncing your own permanent. It's non-land permanent though, but it's a decent bounce effect. Definitely a lot better than Disperse, which is the version of this card that doesn't draw your card when you bounce your own permanent. So interaction, potential to save your creature from a removal spell and draw a card in the process, or just re-trigger some enters the battlefield abilities. I'm gonna give it a... My bounce spells aren't usually that amazing, but I'm gonna give this card a 3 out of 5. Larder Zombie, 1 mana 1/3 with Defender. Okay, this is now one way to benefit from the decayed zombie tokens. This is not the best way to use them, but this is one way to do that. So you can tap 3 untapped creatures you control to, improve your draws and maybe enable your graveyard synergies. Now, a 1 mana 1/3 defender though, how often do you want to have that in your deck? If you are very defensive, maybe you want to. Or if you have a lot of those decayed zombies, maybe this is going to be a good way to get some value out of those. So it's going to be like, in some decks it's just not a good pick at all, but I guess you could use this to some benefit in some decks, so it's gonna be hard to evaluate it. I mean, let's say it's going to be uh, on average, well, a lot of time you don't want to pick this at all, and well, I guess it can be like a 2+ in some cases. Locked in the cemetery. So enchant creature. Well, let's first see. I'll read the last part. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step, and then there's the condition to make it tapped. I'm sure. When this thing enters, if there are 5 or more cards in your graveyard, tap it. All right, so that's one reason to prefer those self-mill effects also. So you won't be putting this on an untapped creature unless you have 5 or more cards in your graveyard. But when you do, this is a pretty decent removal spell. 2 mana removal spell. Yeah, these are tough to kind of evaluate. Maybe it's like a 3+, a 3+ out of 5. I think not gonna pick this that high in the end. Yeah, let's say 3+ out of 5. Organ Hoarder, 4 mana 3/2 enters the battlefield. Look at the top 3 cards, then put one of them into your hand. So this is going to draw your card, and not just a random card, but the best out of the 3, and then also potentially fueling your graveyard synergies. Oh, I like this card. I'm gonna say 4-. That's just value. Otherworldly Gaze. So this doesn't actually net you any cards. Wow. You would have to have a lot of graveyard synergies. Now this does kind of improve the quality of your draws, but it's not worth using a card even though you can do it twice because of the flashback. Yeah, I mean, in some deck maybe you have enough graveyard stuff that you actually will play this, but I consider it quite unlikely, and I'm gonna say it's gonna be a 1 out of 5 in most decks. Revenge of the Drowned. So this is a 4 mana instant speed opponent. Okay, well, basically this is well, it's not a bounce because it goes to opponent's library, but they get to choose if they want to draw it again or just get rid of it by putting it to the bottom of their library. So you basically trade with a card, because even if they want to, and even if they choose the top of their library, they will lose their next draw step in a sense because they just have to redraw it. So it unlike a normal bounce spells, this does trade with a card, and you get a decayed zombie as a bonus. So I guess if you care about the zombies more than just them attacking for 2, it's gonna be a card you want to play. Otherwise, it's just a pretty mediocre card. I'm gonna say it's 2+, but if you get good synergy for the zombie, it can be like a 3+, or up to 3+. Secrets of the Key. Investigate. If this was cast from graveyard, investigate twice. Flashback 4. So first what it does, it's basically a 3 mana draw a card, because you have to first cast the spell and then you get a token that you need to use 2 mana to draw a card. But then if the game goes late, you get to flashback this for 4, and then by paying again 2 mana and then again 2 mana you get to draw. So in the end this will draw you 3 cards, but it's gonna cost a lot of mana, but you can split the mana cost on many different turns, between many turns. So I'm just trying to compare this to something like a 4 mana instant that draws you 2 cards. I think, well, I don't know though, you get to draw 1 card at 3 mana already. Huh. And you can also, the point is, if you don't have a 2-drop, you can cast this on turn 1 and investigate, draw a card from the clue token on turn 2. that's a pattern that's going to happen at some point. So it's a card draw spell for those, I guess, if you want to be the kind of late game focused deck. This is the kind of card you are interested in. And also if you have self mill, you can just try to mill this thing and you can just do the flashback part. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the deck. Not for every deck, but it is letting you quite a few cards in the end. So it's gonna be like from 2 to 3 depending on the deck. Shipwreck Shifters, 2 mana 1/2. When it enters, draw and discard. Okay, well this is a spirit synergy card. So I was wondering if there is a common payoff for spirits, but yeah, there is. Also works with disturb card. So if you can discard a spirit or a card with disturb, you're gonna get a 2 mana 2/3 that can improve your draw. I mean, will improve your hand a little bit. And then of course it works for any other effect too that makes you discard some cards. Not sure if there are many, but you could have multiple of these guys and then they trigger off each other. Okay, definitely not a good card if you don't have spirits or disturb cards. But if you do, it can be a 3+ out of 5 in that case. Otherwise, I would say it's like a 2- out of 5. Startle. Okay, so we get the same card that was in Forgotten Realms, but this also makes you a Decayed zombie. So this is basically a strict upgrade from that card. I can't remember its name, but it was -2/-0, draw a card for 2 mana instant. Well, this is of course better than that, and the zombie is well, if you get good benefit from the zombie, I think this is a card you actively want to pick and play. But if you have no like great use for the token, it's still a pretty well, it's an effect that can net you card advantage. Let's say your 3/3 is battling with their 3/3. You use this, you get to draw a card, your 3/3 survives, theirs not. That's nice, but it's not always going to be the case. The problem is with these kind of effects is that they are not consistently good. There are both situations where when they don't do a lot, and you draw these, and you would just rather have a creature to play instead. So that's the issue with these kind of effects. But I guess if you have synergy for the Decayed zombie tokens, this is a card you want to put in your deck. So it's gonna go from 2 to 3 depending on the deck. Stormrider Spirit, flash, flying 5 mana 3/3. We had this in Syndicate Rising. Well, not the same. Oh, was it even the same actually? No, it doesn't. It wasn't because I see the prints in here. But we had a 5 mana 3/3 flash flyer, and it's just nowadays not good enough in limited. It is like a 2- out of 5, but it is a spirit. So if you for some reason have those spirit energies, I'm not sure how many of those the set has. We just saw one couple of cards ago, but I guess if you care about the creature type, this can be slightly better. But I'm gonna say 2- out of 5. Unblinking Observer. I really like the art here. Pretty funny looking guy. Homunculus there. So what we see here is a pretty good card. 2 mana 2/1. So stat line is not great but acceptable for a 2-drop that has an ability. And this thing says add blue mana, spend this mana only to pay a disturb cost or cast an instant or sorcery spell. So yeah, your 2-drop that can trade with opposing 2-drops can also give you extra mana. And I'm assuming you will have some number of these, and this will also of course work for flash black spells, so you will in this set have more, even though the number of instant or sorceries in your deck might be the same as in like Forgotten Realms. Maybe you have like 5 or 6 of them total. Some of them might have flashback, so you will cast them multiple times, and this will give you a lot of extra mana in that case. I'm gonna say this is a 3. I mean, assuming you have spells that you can use the mana for, this is gonna be a 3+ out of 5 in that case. And that was the blue commons. Let's go to blue uncommons. Covetous Castaway. 2 mana 1/3. when it dies, mill 3 and it has disturb, which is gonna give you a 3/4 flyer for 5 mana. When it enters, you may shuffle up to 3. Okay, so yeah, you get to potentially improve your deck a bit. So if the game goes long, you might draw some of the stuff back. But what you're paying for here, 2 mana for a 1/3. Self-mill on death. Well, some effects care about the self-mill, definitely. Or some cards, I mean, want to be on the graveyard. And some effects care about the number of cards in your graveyard. We already saw one in the blue common that, makes the opponent's creature, well, the enchanted creature not to untap. It can also make it, tap it if you have 5 or more cards in your graveyard. Anyway, point is, self-mill can be relevant in this set. So, of course, a 2 mana 1/3 is just a very defensive card, not offensive at all. But with the disturb, you are gonna get kind of a free 3/4 with a little bit of value. So I'm gonna say this is a, let's say, 3+ out of 5. Delver of Secrets. This time an uncommon. Well, in limited, of course, 1 mana 3/2 flyer would be great, but how easy it is going to be to flip this? It's not going to be that easy. You are not going to have like 12 instant or sorceries in your deck, so you have to be somewhat lucky unless you can manipulate the top card of your deck. I don't think you can do it that easily. So I don't think this is a very good card. If you have like 8 instant or sorceries, at some point you are gonna hit and get a 3/2 flyer, but I don't think it's a high pick or anything. Depending on deck, it can be even a 1 out of 5. But it can go like maybe up to like a 3- out of 5 if you have like 10 instant or sorceries. But most often it's gonna be like a 2- or something like that. I wouldn't pick it too high at all. Dissipate, 3 mana counter any spell, and exile it, which is of course going to be useful against the disturb creatures and flashback spells. Well, 3 mana counter spells still aren't that great, but if you care about day and night cycle, you might want day to become a night, which means you can't play anything on your turn. It's a perfect spot to leave up mana for a counter spell. So depending on your deck, this can be anything from 2 to 3. Fading Hope, another bounce spell. This time it's a strict upgrade for unsummon. It is an uncommon though, so you don't get to see this that often. But we had a common bounce already. So it's a bouncer creature, and if it's a cheap one, you get to scry. It's an okay effect, nothing too amazing. What do I say here? I'm gonna say it's a 3- out of 5 because bounce is not something that's super great in all situations. You actually lose a card here, but the mana cost makes it pretty good interaction in some cases, especially if opponent is trying to use a pump spell in combat or just kill one of your creatures that you really want to save. But let's say 3- out of 5 still. Firmament Sage, 4 mana 2/3 becomes day if it's not night already. Oh, and you get to draw cards. Wow, well this card really cares about the day-night cycle. Okay, this is a way to make the blue instants and counter spells a lot better, because when it is a day, you don't want to cast spells on your own turn just to draw the card by making it becoming a night. And then of course casting 2 spells makes it day again. And of course opponents, if they make the cycle change, you will get the benefit from that thanks to them. So I think, of course, the stats are bad for a 4-drop, but because it shouldn't be that hard to make it, to draw some cards out of this. Yeah, I'm gonna say it is like 4- out of 5. I feel like it doesn't draw your card immediately though. That's the thing. Because when you play this, it becomes day, but then it won't become night on the next turn because you already have played at least one spell. So, okay, let's say 3 plus out of 5, but it can be better. If I might be undervaluing it. Mysterious Tome. Oh, I like this one. First of all, it's basically 5 mana to draw a card, but you can do it in 2 installments. And it will transform. And it will transform into a tap target no land permanent. So that's actually pretty good. And it will transform again. So every other activation is going to have you draw a card and then you tapping some, most often a creature of theirs. And both are very good abilities, and these don't cost a lot of mana. The card draw being only 2 mana here is really, really good. This could have cost like a, I don't know, 2 to play, and then this activation could be 3 mana. It would be a lot worse, but 2 mana to draw a card, that's fantastic. And this tap ability is really good. I think this is easily going to be a 4 out of 5. Nebelgast Intruder, 3 mana 2/1 flash flying up to 1 target creature. Okay, so this can ambush something, or also can, maybe this doesn't have to ambush, but it can make some other of your creatures that was going to block and trade with an opponent's creature, or not block, just also works when your creature is attacking. Well, anyway, the free -2/-0 can be pretty nice because you are not playing that much extra. You are getting a flash 2/1 flyer for 3, and this is going to net your card sometimes. So I'm going to say this is pretty good, and I'm going to say it is, I'm going to give it 3 plus. Maybe it's not that strong enough. It could be 4 minus. Let's give it a 3 plus. Ominous Roost, 3 mana enchantment. When it enters, create a blue bird creature token. Okay, yeah, okay, well, this is definitely a, well, you get one flying blocker, no, flying bird token that can't block, except for creatures which have flying. So it's not gonna give you that great jump blockers, because usually opponent will have more ground guys than flyers. But if you can get multiple of these flyers, it can be pretty sweet. So when this enters, you get one. That's definitely not worth 3 mana. It's bad at that point. But whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, you get to get more of these. And this doesn't even have the limitation that it happens only once per turn. If you can cast 3 spells from your graveyard in one turn, you will get 3 1/1 tokens. Okay, well, this is definitely a build around. So it's gonna be a 1 out of 5 in decks that don't have multiple ways to cast stuff from the graveyard. But this can be an incredibly good one in those. And it can be like a 4 out of 5 in those. So it's really depending on the deck. It's a build around card that can be very strong. Overwhelmed Archivist, another disturb creature. It's this time the baseline is 3 mana 3/2 that draw a card, discard a card. That's definitely fine. I mean, it's not quite a draw card, but of course it would be very strong if it was a draw card. But you get to improve your card quality a little bit. And then it has Disturb. So when it dies, you can cast it for 4 mana and it becomes a 2/1 flyer which loots when you attack. Well, that's sweet. I really like this card. I'm gonna say it's 4 minus. Phantom Carriers. Carriage. Oh, whatever. 6 mana 4/4. That flies. Okay, that's a pretty good stat line. When it enters, you may search your library for a card with flashback or disturb. Put it into your graveyard, then shuffle. So it's like not quite drawing a card, but in some cases can even be better than drawing a card, because at this point in the game, you probably don't need lands that much. So this will always get you something you can definitely play, unless your deck doesn't have any of those. I wouldn't play this. I mean, it's not great in decks that don't have flashback or disturb spells, but how hard can it be to get a few of those? I don't think it's going to be that hard. So assuming you get to get something with this ability, I'm going to say it's a 4. It's a 6 mana card. It's an expensive one. I'm gonna say 4 minus out of 5 because 6 mana 4/4 is still pretty, expensive and not that big. But of course, flying makes it a lot better. Scarp Wrangler, 2 mana, 2/1. Okay, this is one of the better payoffs for having those zombie tokens. So without using any mana, you can tap 3 untapped creatures, you control 2 tap target creatures. So if you have those decayed zombies, that's one perfect way to use them. Otherwise, it's 2 mana 2/1. That's gonna be pretty hard to utilize unless you really have a swarm of creatures. So it's gonna be like a 2 out of 5 until you get a lot of creatures you can. Well, they don't have to be those zombie tokens. It's just one option. You might play like blue-white that has a lot of some human tokens or whatever. It's also possible. So whenever you can tap, whenever you can have like a 5 to 6, 5 or more creatures on your battlefield, this tap ability will be quite good. And in that case, it will be like a 3 out of 5, 3 plus out of 5. Vivisection. Okay, well, this you want to sacrifice a decayed zombie on this thing. 4 mana draw 3 with a pretty heavy cost. So you want to sacrifice, if it's not a decayed zombie, then at least something which has disturb, ideally, or just some random token you got for free. You don't want to sacrifice an actual worthy creature here. But if you have the fodder to sacrifice for this thing, it's a quite nice card. So it's gonna range from 2 to 3 plus depending on your deck. And that was the uncommons. Let's see the rares and mythic rares for blue. So this is the blue aura curse. So any number of target players other than that player it's okay. So assuming you don't get any more than this curse attached to them, this is a 5 mana card that makes you draw cards once per turn cycle. Well, in the long game, you will win because of this. So but if tapping out for this, for using 5 mana for this, if opponent is raising you, you can't just use it. You have to be very defensive. You have to have ways to keep your life total high enough for this card to do its thing. So you have to, well, simply have a defensive deck that has cheap interaction for the opponent or just very good blockers, and then this card will be very good in that case. But in some cases it's just not worth even playing, so hard to say, hard to evaluate. But I'm gonna say it's in the correct deck it's going to be like a 3 plus out of 5, otherwise it's like a even 2 minus out of 5. Grafted Identity, well, pretty good control magic, of course. With this thing you want to have some decayed zombies, you don't want to sacrifice actual good creatures, but this is a very strong effect obviously. So I'm gonna say it's a 4 plus out of 5, maybe with like a slight assumption that you have some good fodder to sacrifice. But yeah, let's say 4 plus out of 5. I mean, it could be a 5, but it is an aura. Opponent can get rid of the aura. They can bounce the creature if they play blue. It's not. Yeah, I'm gonna say 4 plus out of 5. Liar or Lear, Disciple of the Drowned. 5 mana 3/4. Spells can't be countered. Okay. Oh, but it gives you instant and sorceries flashback. So ideally you have, maybe you play like a blue-black or blue-red and you have some burn spells and the other removal spells that don't otherwise have flashback, and this thing gives them flashback. So thing is, the spells can't be countered is barely relevant. It can be, but it's barely relevant. 5 mana 3/4 is not a good stat line. Definitely bad stats for the cost. But assuming you have instant sorceries that don't have all flashback, this is obviously going to be great value. So assuming you have at least, like, I don't know, 4 or more cards you want to recast from your graveyard, this is going to be a 4 out of 5 easily. If not, this is going to be a 2 out of 5. It's just 5 mana 3/4 doesn't cut it. But assuming it's not that hard to get a bunch of instant sorceries, that are, nice to get to recast. Malevolent Hermit. Alright, so 2 mana, 2/1. And counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3. So this is of course an on-board trick, so the opponent knows about it. When they are playing a non-creature spell, if they don't have 3 mana, and you have 1 mana up here, they can force you to basically sacrifice this. Well, you are not forced to do that, but often you will want to do that. Disturb, because of course the point is that you can sacrifice this and then cast a disturbed version, and you will get the Wind Drake. It's a 3 mana 2/2 flyer. Non-creature spells you control can't be countered. Again, barely relevant. But the thing this thing just does is that it delays the opponents from playing their non-creature spells, unless they really don't mind trading for the sacrifice ability. So it is going to make the opponent's life a bit hard. And a 2 mana 2/1 is definitely a reasonable stat line given the abilities this thing has. So I'm gonna say this is let's say 4 minus out of 5. Memory Deluge. 4 mana instant. Look at the top X cards of your library. X is the mana amount of mana spent to cast the spell. So first you will, unless you get some discounts or effects that make it more expensive to cast, you will basically look at 4 cards. 2 of them go to your hand. And then this has flashback for 7, and that means you will look top 7 cards, keep them. Oh yeah, this is a good draw spell. It's also rare, so it won't be happening that often, but this is really good. Okay, I'm gonna give it like a 4 out of 5. You don't always get to 7 mana, but it's already doing a lot for 4. And then the potential to play this at 7 mana is gonna be just great. It's easily a 4 out of 5. Maybe I give it a 4 plus, actually, because it's such a great thing when you get to cast a flashback. I'm gonna say 4 plus. Patrician Geist, flying 2/2 for 3. Okay, that's a Spirit Lord. It's a rare, of course, so you are not gonna get the Spirit deck that often, but when you have this, you definitely want to pick spirits whenever. I mean, it's gonna be at least a tiebreaker, the creature type, when you are deciding between 2 cards, if you have this. Okay, so spells you cast from your graveyard cost 1 less. That's also nice. So definitely, because it seems like there are a bunch of spirits. Yeah, the anthem effect will often do something. I'm gonna say this is a 4 minus out of 5. Could even be better if you have a lot more spirits and a lot of stuff to cast from graveyard. Puppet Stitcher is a mythic rare, 3 mana 2/3. Okay, so for every instant and sorcery you cast, you get a Decade token, which is pretty sweet because you can get quite a few of them, especially because you get 2 casts out of flashback spells. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more creature tokens, you can transform it. Shouldn't be a big problem to get those tokens. You have a factory, so it's not a creature anymore, it's an artifact. Creature tokens you control lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 3/3. And then if you just want to transform it again, you can do that in your upkeep if you have more instant and sorceries and you want to cast them to get more tokens. Of course, the idea here is that the zombie tokens become a 3/3, but more importantly, they lose all abilities, which includes the Decade ability. So they can block, they can attack without dying at end of combat. I'm assuming you're going to have some number of instant and sorceries when you're playing blue pretty easily, and this is going to be I'm going to say this is a 5. Yeah, I mean, you get those free tokens that become 3/3s. And then you can transform this into an artifact that doesn't, you can't use creature removal to deal with it. So I'm gonna say this is 5 out of 5. Sludge monster, 5 mana, 5/5. Enters or attacks. Put the slime counter on up to one other creature. Okay. Non-horror creatures with slime counters on them. Lose all abilities and have base. Okay, so well, basically you can make opponent's creatures into that are threatening into just 2/2s, and you can make your own 1/1s and such into 2/2s, and of course the decayed zombies you can make them lose abilities. Yeah, which includes the decayed, and well, they are 2/2 already, so that doesn't matter. But yeah, this is definitely, I mean, mostly this is going to make the opponents good creatures into just bad 2/2s. And of course, when this thing dies, they will revert back, but it's a pretty good card. I'm gonna say it's 4+ out of 5. The stat line is also pretty nice. It's not great, but I mean, it's not like a mythic rare. I mean, it could be like a 6/6 if it was like a mythic rare, but 5 mana 5/5 is still good. Spectral Adversary. So the blue card of this cycle is 2 mana, 2/1 flash flyer, and then you can pay 2 mana any number of times in addition to that. So you get that many counters on this thing, and then up to that many other target things phase out. So you can phase out also opponent stuff, so they can't, for example, block. You can save your own stuff from removal because this has flash. Yeah, and if nothing else, you can just play this on turn 4 as a turn 2 as a 2/1 flyer, which is pretty good. Aggressive stat, evasive creature, and of course, when you have more mana available, you can make it bigger. At 4 mana, it's gonna be a 3/2, 6 mana, 4/3, and so on. It's a very efficient creature, but not really like a great bomb. I'm gonna say it's 4 out of 5. Suspicious Stowaway. Can't be blocked, so 2 mana 1/1. Deals combat damage to a player, draw a card and discard. So looter. Basically it's there has been the shadow creature with a looting ability. Don't recall its name. Well, it doesn't matter what its name it was. It was in Time Spiral, I think. But yeah, this is pretty good because it can't be blocked. You get to loot for free. Fantastic. And even deal 1 damage each turn. But it's a werewolf, so let's see when it's night. It's gonna be a green 2/1. That can't be blocked. Deals combat damage to the player. Draw a card. Yeah, you know what? That is really good. So unblockable creature that deals 2 damage and draws you a card. Now, of course, it won't always be this version because even opponent can just, when it's night, they can play 2 spells and it becomes day. So then it's only a 1/1 that loots, but then you might, not play some spells if you have some instants. You don't have to play spells on your own turn, then it becomes night and the opponent is forced to play 2 spells. And yeah, this is a really good card, but of course the werewolves don't always have the side you want them to have. But I mean, that's not going to stop me from picking this very high. I'm going to say this is a 4+ out of 5. Triskaidekaphile. Don't know how to say that word. So anyway, 2 mana 1/3, no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. Alright, that's not going to happen. But what is going to happen is that you are going to play a good, reasonable steady 2-drop, defensive 2-drop, and whenever you have 4 mana available and no better use for it, you can draw a card for free. That's fantastic. This card is a 4 out of 5. And we will go to the black commons. Maybe this will end at some point. Arrogant Outlaw, 3 mana 3/2. Yeah, this is a theme for black and I think also red. I suppose it's for vampires. So if an opponent lost life this turn, something happens. This is repeating on many cards. So this is a 3 mana 3/2 that can make drain 2 life still. It's going to be okay when you are quite likely to make the drain happen. Otherwise, A 3 mana 3/2, not the greatest stat line. I'm gonna say it's still a 3 out of 5 because it should be not that hard to gain the drain effect. Bat Whisperer, the same ability. So this time you have a 4 mana 4/2, not great. But if it comes with a 1 mana flyer, it's going to be better, a lot better. Of course, this 1 mana flyer is going to also make it easier to trigger any further similar abilities because, well, it's not that easy to block a flying creature. So you can, for example, get more of these Bat Whisperers or Arrogant Outlaws with the trigger when you have those flying creatures. So I'm gonna say, because of 4 mana 4/2 is quite bad stat line, I'm going to say it's like a 3 minus out of 5 because it's really not that exciting when you don't get the bat. Blade Brand. Okay, this is a reprint. Ravnica Allegiance had it at least. Well, it's definitely a decent card because it has some utility in the sense that maybe you are attacking with a decayed zombie and opponent just blocks it. Well, I don't know. That's maybe not a good example because if you're attacking with a decayed zombie, the opponent knows it's gonna die anyway at the end of combat. So unless they really can't take it through, they'll just let it go through. But maybe the better example is that we have these kind of cards. So you are wanting to attack and make damage to the opponent. So if you also have Blade Brand in the deck, so you can just freely attack. So maybe your opponent has like a, I don't know, 4/4 in there, and then you have, let's say, already one of these guys on the battlefield. You're gonna attack with this, and if they block, you can use Blade Brand to trade up. This replaces the card. So the opponent might be inclined to not block, but when they don't block, they know that they're going to enable your these kind of abilities. So the Blade Brand has, I think, value because of this opponent lost life. Opponent lost life kind of theme some of the cards have. So how do I rate it? It's still somewhat situational. Let's say it's like a 3 minus out of 5 still. Blood Pact. Target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. Instant speed. It's target player, so you can win by targeting your opponent that has only 1 or 2 life with this thing. But otherwise it's a divination that's instant that costs you 2 life. I think it's okay. The instant is relevant because that makes it easier to deal with the day-night cycle if you want to. A day to become a night, you can just use instant. Like I have said already many times in in this set review, instants are relevant for the day-night cycle. I'm gonna say this card is still just like a, I don't know, 3 minus out of 5, 2 plus out of 5, something like that. It's not that amazing. Crawl from the Cellar. So it's just a 1 mana, return a creature from your graveyard to hand. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target a zombie you control. Okay, black has zombies other than the decayed zombies too. So it's good. I think blue might have some zombies too in Innistrad, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. It has. So if you have zombies, this is pretty nice. And it also has flashback. So this is a very nice upgrade for your normal Descent Tomb or Raise Dead or whatever the card is. So with the flashback and the potential to get the +1/+1 counter, I like this quite a bit. I'm going to give this a rating of 3 out of 5. Defenestrate. Okay, destroy target creature without flying, instant speed. Now, I suppose there can be decks that have a lot of flying creatures, but almost vast majority of the decks have a bunch of non-flying creatures. I'm gonna say this is a 4 out of 5. Diagraph Horde. 5 mana 3/4. When it enters, create 2 of those decayed zombie tokens. When you do exile up to 2 target, okay, it can bully the opponent a bit. Get rid of their graveyard synergies before they get to use them. So this card is going to be nice if you have uses for the zombie tokens. Otherwise, you're paying 5 mana for a 3/4 that maybe can deal some damage to opponent. It's not that great in that case. So this goes from 2 to 3, I think. Duress, not great. Sideboard card in best of 3, and that's also requiring a quite specific situation. There has to be some amazing non-creature cards in the opponent's deck for you to want to sideboard this in. This whiffs too often. Opponent might just have lands and creatures in their hand. So I'm gonna say it's 1 out of 5 in best of 1 and like a mediocre quality sideboard card in best of 3. Maybe like a 2+. Eaten alive. Yeah, this is pretty good. A fantastic way to also use the decayed zombies. But even if you have to pay 5 mana for this, it's not the end of the world. It's a high quality removal spell, just like the other one that kills non-flyers. I'm gonna say it's 4 out of 5. Ecstatic Awakener. 1 mana, 1/1. Sacrifice another creature, draw a card, then transform into a 4/4. Well, I mean, even if you just transform, even if you just play this on turn 1, some random 2-drop on turn 2, and on turn 3 you can sacrifice that 2-drop to draw a card, so it replaces itself, and then this thing transforms into a 4/4 on turn 3, and you can attack with it. And of course, then you can think about the situations when you can sacrifice just a decayed zombie. And this is a common. I think this is a high quality common for any deck that has sacrifice fodder. But even if it's not fodder, because of the card draw, it's gonna be pretty nice. I'm gonna say this is a 4- out of 5 easily. Hobbling Zombie, Death Touch, 3 mana 2/2. Yeah, it's a good stat line. No Death Touch can trade with anything, of course, except if something has first or double strike. And create a 2/2 decayed zombie when it dies. Alright, pretty decent. 3+, I would say, because you should maybe have some value for the zombie token. Mokrat Behemoth. So a 5 mana 7/6, but it has an additional. It also, by the way, has menace, and at additional cost, either sacrifice a creature or pay 2. So you can pay this for 7, which is also not that impossible, but mostly you want to sacrifice something like a decayed zombie mostly. So there's a lot of things that can sacrifice stuff. The decayed zombies seem to be very valuable. Because this is, of course, if you pay 5 mana and sacrifice, a decayed zombie that you basically got for free from some other effect, you have a 5 mana 7/6 menace guy. That's fantastic. I'm gonna say this is a 4-. I mean, it is a 5 mana card, but this is very high impact. I'm gonna say 4-, because I'm assuming you will often get a decayed zombie to eat with this. No Way Out, 3 mana. Okay, discard spell, but you create a 2/2 zombie with decayed. The thing with discard in this set is that because there are disturb creatures and flashback spells, discarding is not as bad as it can be otherwise. So I don't think this is very good, even though it creates the zombie token. I mostly maybe think this is a sideboard card against some kind of decks that have expensive high impact cards that often are going to be one of the 2 final cards in their hand, and you can make them discard them. But otherwise I don't like this too much. I'm gonna say it's a 2 out of 5. Novice Occultist, 2 mana 1/2. When it dies you draw a card and lose 1 life. Okay, this is basically, well, you can jump block with this thing, of course, and draw a card. It's not the end of the world, but what is this good for anything that makes you sacrifice a creature as a cost? And we have seen those. I've said for those cards that you want to sacrifice a decayed zombie, but you might also want to sacrifice a Novice Occultist. Assuming you have some sacrifice synergies in the deck, this is going to be a this is going to be a 3 out of 5, 3 plus out of 5. Otherwise, it's not so good. Maybe like a 2 plus. Olivia's Midnight Ambush. Okay, 2 mana -2 -2. A third good common removal spell for black. And if it's night, it basically kills anything. But even a 2 mana -2 -2 is pretty decent as instant speed effect. So I'm gonna say it's 4 out of 5. A Rotten Reunion. 1 mana, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. Okay, so because of the flashback, you get a couple of decayed zombie tokens. It's not that good. You would really have to have a lot of effects that care about having these things. So I'm gonna say it's, or I mean, I guess you can consider this as a way to exile opponents' graveyard synergies, but I'm not sure how good that's gonna be. So I'm gonna say this card is going to be like a 2 minus, maybe even just 1, unless you get very good value out of the zombies. Shady Traveler, 3 mana 2/3 menace, and it's a werewolf. Okay, the 3 mana 2/3 menace is not bad. The menace definitely makes it a lot better than other normal 3 mana 2/3s. But we'll see what it's gonna be when it's a knight, and this has transformed into a Stalking Predator, which is a 4 mana. No, not mana. It's always going to be a 3 mana card. It's going to be a 4/4 menace creature. Well, that's very good. So because the baseline is not that bad and the transformed version is very good, I'm going to say this is a 3 plus, maybe even a 4 minus, but at least a 3 plus. Siege Zombie. Okay, one other way to benefit from the decayed zombies, and you don't even pay really extra. 2 mana 2/2 is fine, and this will be a useful ability when you have stuff to tap, whether they are decayed zombies or whatever. Making the opponent lose 1 life here and there is going to be valuable. I'm gonna say this is a 3 plus. Vampire Interloper can't block, but it's a 2 mana 2/1 flyer. Very aggressive, also very good way to make your if opponent lost life, do this and that effects trigger, and it's just unless you are very defensive, this is going to be a fantastic card. I think it's for is it a for well, the lack of ability to block might be, I mean, in some cases you want to block with your creatures. This never can block, so let's say 3 plus out of 5. And there are some artifacts I'm not going to cover now. Let's go to black uncommons. Baneblade Scoundrel, werewolf, 4 mana 4/3, becomes blocked. Okay, it's hard to block. Okay, so basically opponent can't trade with this thing unless they block with a 4-power creature. Okay, that's good. 4 mana 4/3 with a nice ability, but of course it's a werewolf, so when it's night it becomes a 5/3, sorry, 5/4 with the same ability regarding blockers, and whenever a creature blocking this dies, it makes the opponent lose life. Yeah, well, basically it's a good 4-drop, and of course even better when it's night, so I'm gonna say it's a 4 minus. Blood Tithe Collector, 5 mana 3 for flyer. When it enters, it can make the opponent discard a card. Yeah, I guess when you don't get to discard, it's a bit expensive for the stats, but given that sometimes you get a discard effect, on average I would say this is pretty nice. I'm gonna say it's a 3, maybe it's a 3 plus out of 5. I'm not really sure which, but it's a 5-drop, so it depends, of course, on how many other 5-drops you have. You can't just have 5 drops in your deck, so that's making because I evaluate cards based on how high you pick them, and you don't want to start a draft, for example, with this thing, because while it's a playable 5-drop, you might find some better 5-drops. So that's why some of the expensive cards don't have that amazing value by me, because the value also kind of tells how high you should pick a card. So I'm gonna say this is a 3 out of 5. Covered Cut Purse, 3 mana 2/1. When it enters, destroy target creature that you don't control that was dealt damage. Okay, this is a pretty sweet effect. Because you don't always get to do this, but when you do, it's pretty fantastic. Basically, you can get rid of some big blockers this way. This also has the disturb, so it's a 5 mana disturb that gives you a 2/2. Oh, but you get a flying Death Toucher. Yeah, that's actually pretty fantastic. 2/2 flyer with Death Touch is gonna be good, even if you paid 5 mana for it. You don't pay a card for it. And this frontside ability should be good most of the time, so I'm gonna say it's a 4, maybe like a 4 minus out of 5. Dreadhound, 6 mana 6/6. When it enters, mill 3, okay, self mill. Whenever a creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere, each opponent loses 1 life. So it works with the self mill too. Alright, so that's actually pretty sweet. 6 mana 6/6 is a reasonable stat line. It doesn't have trample like the green Colossal Dreadmaw has, but it's still a good stat line, and this ability makes the opponent lose life here and there. But of course, if you can't have a lot of 5-drops in your deck, you definitely can't have a lot of 6-drops. So I'm gonna give this a rating of 3+. Foul Play. Destroy target creature with power 2 or less, investigate 2 mana sorcery. Well, I mean, power 2 or less is a lot better than mana value 2 or less, because this can hit creatures that cost like 4 mana, for instance, in some cases. And it definitely some 3-drops, and you get a card from this at some point. It's pretty sweet. It of course can't hit all the creatures. I mean, only a fraction of the creatures can be destroyed with this, but most decks will have multiple targets for this, and this allows you to draw a card in the end. So you can even think about this card to be a 4 mana spell that kills a creature with power 2 or less and draws you a card. You can just split the cost, for 2 different turns. So I'm gonna say this is a 4 or 4 minus out of 5. Let's say 4 or 5. 4 out of 5. Ghoulish Procession, 2 mana enchantment. You get those black zombie tokens whenever 1 or more non-token creatures die. This ability only triggers only once, and the wording is whenever 1 or more. So even if 3 non-token creatures die at the same time, you will get only 1 black zombie token, and this won't trigger any other time that turn. But this is a way to amass an army of those zombie tokens. So assuming you have, I guess they can be used, of course, as as a one-time attackers, and you can finish your opponent if you have 7 of these, and of course that's 14 damage you are representing. So that's a lot of damage when you get an army of these. But ideally, you have some other ways to benefit from the tokens. This is a build around. I would say this goes from 2 to 4, because I could see this being also very good card, and this can be a 4 in some decks. Heirloom Mirror, 2 mana artifact, 1 mana tap, pay 1 life, discard a card. So a lot of different costs there. Draw a card, mill a card, ritual counter. Then if it has 3 or more, transform, and you get a creature that has flying that can become bigger. Okay, that's pretty sweet. So you basically, you have to pay some life too, but discard a card to draw a card. Okay, so you can improve potentially the quality of cards in your hand, but once you have done it 3 times, you get a big flyer. That seems pretty good for me, or to me. I'm gonna give this a rating of 4 minus. Infernal Grasp, more removal. Okay, Yeah, this is this one. I remember seeing this in some very early spoiler. Destroy a creature, you lose 2 life. Now, sometimes you don't have that much life, but in the other cases when you don't care about losing 2 life that much, and often you are going to destroy a creature that was going to deal maybe even more than 2 damage to you, and all this for a 2 mana instant. This is a 4+. This is the best removal spell in the set, at least based on what I've seen so far. 4+. Morbid Opportunist. 3 mana 1/3 whenever one or more other creatures die. Okay, and this is other. This also works when you use removal on the opponent's stuff. And you can just jump block with your own stuff and draw a card. And you can attack with a Decayed Zombie and draw a card from it. Alright, this seems very good. I'm gonna say 4 out of 5. Necrosynthesis. 2 mana aura that can enchant a creature. Whenever... Okay, this basically makes the creature grow a bit. It doesn't do anything when you cast it, so something has to happen before it does anything. When enchanted creature dies, okay, you get to basically like draw a card with selection. I mean, they try to make these kind of effects playable because it will replace itself in the end. But why would I play this kind of stuff on my creature that doesn't even grow immediately? And the opponent might still kill it if it becomes a problem, and then you get 1 card back, but because the opponent got the 2-for-1 when they kill the enchanted creature, I just think it's too much hassle for whatever it does. It's slow, it doesn't do anything until it has been active for a couple of turns, and yeah, it's not worth it. I'm gonna say it's like a 2-. I guess it's playable, but it's a 2- to me. Stromkirk, Blood Thief, 3 mana 2/2. If an opponent lost life, put a +1/+1 counter on target vampire, so it doesn't even... It can target itself, but it doesn't have to. If you have other vampires, which you can have if you play black, and I guess red too. Well, that's pretty good. I mean, imagine the play pattern of just being able to connect with your 2-drop, playing this as your 3-drop, and this becomes a 3/3, or if the 2-drop was a vampire, you can make that bigger. This is a pretty fantastic effect. Free counters. I like it. I'm going to say this is a 4- out of 5. Vengeful Strangler, 2 mana 2/1. Can't block. But it is a double-sided card, so when this thing dies, you return it transformed. Attached to a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Okay, so this is an aura. At the beginning of your upkeep, enchanted permanent's controller sacrifices a non-land permanent and loses 1 life. Well, they can't just sacrifice the thing this is, the thing this is enchanting. They don't have to do that though, if they have other fodder to sacrifice. In that case, they continuously at least lose 1 life. A 2/1 that can't block. Well, I'm gonna say it's in most cases it's going to be like a slow removal. This will die somehow. Either you sacrifice this for one of your multiple sacrifice effects, or maybe opponent just blocks this when you are going to attack with this. You can't block with this thing itself. And then you just put this on their best creature, and they probably don't want to start sacrificing a lot of other stuff, so they will sacrifice the best creature, and this is a removal spell in that sense. But it's you have to jump through some... what's the saying? Whatever. I mean, you have to set up it a bit. I don't think it's that amazing. I'm gonna give it a 3+. Alright, so now the black rares and mythic rares. This is going to end. Wow, this is gonna be a long video. Alright, Bloodline Culling. 3 mana instant. Creature tokens get -2/-2. Well, that's the less interesting part, although that can be very good when it is good. But yeah, a 3 mana target creature gets -5, -5. It's a double caster, but I mean, it's a premium removal spell. What can you say? Is it gonna be a 4 plus? Because it's a double caster, I'm gonna say just 4 out of 5. It's, for example, not splashable. Champion of the Perished. Ha ha ha. I wonder what that refers to. Alright, anyway, 1 mana, 1/1. Another zombie enters, put a +1/+1 counter. And you will have a lot of zombies. You can have zombie creature cards and then, of course, zombie tokens with Decade. So I'm gonna assume it's very easy to grow this multiple times. For 1 mana, it's gonna be great. In a late game situation, when you top deck this in a top deck war, yeah, well, maybe it's a 1/1, but in any other case, this is just gonna be a very undercosted creature. So I'm gonna say this is a 4-. Curse of Leeches. So the black curse. Beginning of enchanted place, upkeep, they lose 1 life and you get 1 life. But this has daybound. This is an aura curse. Okay, so when it's night, you get a. Wait a minute. As this permanent transforms into Curse of Leeches, attach it to. Okay, wow. So first you get this kind of a nice little drain effect, which, I think it's worth 3 mana. Because you combine them losing life and you gaining life. It's actually quite nice. If it only was one or the other, it's not that great. But when you get the drain, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's going to be valuable in most games. But then, when it becomes night, you actually have a 4/4 lifelink creature. And then if it becomes day, you can attach it to the opponent again. So I'm going to say this is pretty good. I'm gonna say it's 4 out of 5. Is it the 5? No, I don't think it's a bomb level card. It's pretty slow and the 4/4 creature can still be traded with, although you will get some nice amount of life while doing so. But yeah, let's say 4 out of 5. Giza Glorious Resurrector. Okay, 4 mana 4/4. So very nice stat line already. You exile opponents. The opponent. Okay, the creatures die. They exiled instead. Okay, at the beginning of your upkeep. What? You're kidding me. So you have a 4 mana 4/4. And when opponent's creatures die, you get to put them on the battlefield under your control. Yeah, they do gain Decade. I read that. I just didn't read it aloud. But this doesn't make them 2/2s. I mean, if they are big creatures, you get the big Decade creatures. If you have like a 4-power creature, they choose not to block it. Yeah, you have to sacrifice it because of the Decade, but they just lose 4 life. This is pretty good. But it's not bomb level, I don't know. Should I give more cards 5 out of 5 rating? I don't know. I'm gonna say this is a 4+ out of 5. Graveyard Trespasser. 3 mana 3/3. Discard a card ward cost, okay? When this enters or attacks, exile a card. If a creature card was exiled, drain. Okay, but the point is, this is a 3 mana 3/3 with a pretty nice ward cost. Yeah, you get to drain some life here, but it's also a werewolf, so this is the daybound version of it. And when it's night, it has the same ward ability and then the same attack ability, except for it's going to be 2 cards from graveyards, and then of course for each card, if it was a creature, you get to drain, and it's a 4/4, not just a 3/3. So this is a fantastic card. You pay 3 mana, you can sometimes have a 4/4, and the drain can matter. And the fact that you get to exile cards from graveyards, opponent's graveyard, can prevent them from using their graveyard stuff. So pretty good card. I'm gonna say it's a 4. I'm thinking about if I'm gonna pick like the good common and uncommon removal over this card. I think I might. It's in the end just a creature. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's 4 out of 5, but probably not as good as the common, even the common removal spells. Yadar, Goal Collar of Nephalia. 2 mana 1/1. Well, that's not a good stat line. But at the beginning of your end step, so right on the turn when you cast it, if you control no creatures with Decayed, create a zombie with Decayed. Okay. So you get infinite sacrifice fodder, you get infinite, 2/2 attackers. Doesn't matter what happens. If the opponent takes 2, fine. You sacrifice the token and get another one. If they block it, well, you still get another one. Pretty good. I'm gonna say it is 4. Well, it really depends on the amount of synergy. I'm gonna say it's 4 minus if you don't have anything else to do with these zombies than just attacking with them. But if you have some synergies, it can become a 4 plus easily. Jaren Corrupted Bishop. Mythic rare, 3 mana 2/3. And then a lot of text. When it enters or another non-token human you control dies, you get to, well, you lose 1 life, but you get a token. That's sweet. Target human gets lifelink with an activated ability. Okay, you get some life back. At the beginning of your end step, if you have exactly 13 life, you may pay 6 and you get this monster. Flying Trample lifelink. And with some card draw ability too. So it's hard to say how easy it's gonna be to be at 13 life, but of course with the abilities this card has, help you get there. But the point is you don't need it. This is going to be a good card no matter what. So and of course if you get to transform, it's just an insane card. I'm gonna say this is let's see. You get tokens. Non-token human you can't. Oh yeah, it has to be a human that dies. Yeah, it doesn't care about non-token creatures, but it cares about specifically humans that are not tokens. So you don't get to have a ton of these 1/1s. But yeah, I don't know how easy it's gonna get to the transform thing. So I'm gonna say it's like a 4 plus, maybe not quite 5, but I could be mistaken there. Another mythic rare. Well, this is more straightforward. This card here is a 6/6 flying trample lifelink. When you do the setup for it, this thing is just a 6 mana 6/6 flying trample, and I don't need to read out the text unless they are like a drawbacks, which I don't assume them to be. That's already a 5 out of 5. Such a massive flyer with trample. Even though it's a 6 mana card, it's amazing. But let's say with what else it does. Sacrifice another creature. Target player mills 3 cards. Well, okay, that I suppose can be relevant at some point. Pay 1 life at 1 mana and okay, well this helps casting spells from your graveyard, but you don't want to pay like a ton of life for that. Point is, 6 mana 6/6 flying trample, it's a 5 out of 5. Mask of Griselbrand. Okay, 3 to play, 3 to equip. Artifact equipment. Equipped creature has flying and lifelink. No stat boost. No stat boost at all. Whenever the creature dies that's equipped, you can pay life equal to power and then draw cards. Well, that's nice. And because of the lifelink, it's not so bad to pay life, especially if it dies in combat. You just gained equal amount of life. But even if this doesn't have a stat boost, giving flying and lifelink to a creature is pretty darn strong. And you can draw some cards with it. I'm gonna say this is actually a 5 out of 5. I would pick this over anything else. I mean, because in Magic Arena, I'm only playing Magic Arena. Of course, in physical packs you can have a foil rare and a rare, so it's possible to have this and some other 5 out of 5 card in the same pack, and I don't know how to decide between them. But let's say in Magic Arena, when you only have one rare, I don't think there's going to be any uncommon that's going to be better than this. So this is going to be a 5 out of 5 to me. Because this should be, as long as you have creatures, how does the opponent raise you? This is a bit slow to use, but also you have the option to just draw a ton of cards if you want to. So yeah, 5 out of 5 to me. The mythic massacre. Yeah, this is one of the mass removal effects. This is the mythic rare. Red has a rare mass removal. We will see that in the next part. But anyway, of course, it's not easy to kill everything. If opponent has like a 6 toughness creature, it's gonna cost 8 mana to kill it. But this can kill a lot of creatures when you put like 5 to 6 mana to it. And then when this is an enchantment, not a sorcery, so this will stick around, and the other abilities will continue relevant. So whenever a creature you control dies, opponent loses life. Whenever a creature opponent control dies, you gain life. So of course it will happen also when the -X kicks in. So not only is it the mass removal, but you get some life swing here too. So it's just I mean, again, it's a rat effect that is not going to be good when you are ahead. But given the passive abilities, you can't just play this for about 2 black mana. Of course, it's not worth a card, but because you have the option, I mean, if you don't need the mass removal, this still has a usable mode. So I'm gonna say this is better mass removal than the white one, and I'm gonna rate this at 4 out of 5. Slaughter Specialist, 2 mana 3/3. What? Good stats. This has to have a drawback. When it enters, each opponent creates a 1/1 human. Okay. Okay, they get a 1/1, you get a 2 mana 3/3. I guess I can live with that. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, this becomes bigger. Alright. So the worst case scenario is that you play this, they get a 1/1 token and they kill this guy. Well, they have a 1/1 token. I guess it could be worse. The best case scenario is that, well, they don't kill it and their opponent starts to lose their creatures and this thing grows, quite big. So I would say it is a 4 out of 5. Is it a 4 minus out of 5 because of the... Okay, let's say it's 4 minus out of 5 because it's still not nice to give the opponent a token and they might find removal for this. Tainted Adversary. 2 mana, 2/3 death touch, so very good stat line. And then you can pay. Okay, this thing requires 3 mana, which you can play any number of times you have mana for. And if you do, this thing gets +1/+1 counters, and you create twice that many zombie creature tokens with Decayed. Alright, but 3 mana is quite a lot. So first of all, well, you can have a 2 mana 2/3 Death Toucher, which is great. And then you can have a 5 mana 3/4 Death Toucher that comes with 2 of these black zombie tokens. And then in limited, sometimes you are at 8 mana, in which case you will have a 4/5 Death Toucher and you will get 4 of these zombie tokens. I don't think you're gonna be at 11 mana that often, so it's not even relevant to consider that scenario. But those 3 are the things that are gonna happen. I think mostly you're gonna play this for 2 or 5 mana, but sometimes you have the 8 mana, of course, available too. And well, it slightly depends, of course, how can you utilize those zombie tokens. But because the baseline is so good, 2 mana 2/3 Death Toucher, I'm gonna say it's a 4+. Oh, well, I'm just thinking. I gave some of the common removal 4 out of 5. This is just a creature. This is never gonna be that big. Even at 5 mana, it's a 3/4, and maybe that zombie tokens don't do that much. Okay, fine. I'm gonna give it a 4 exactly, and probably will pick some of the common removal over this card. Okay, well, there's a hostel, which I'm not gonna cover now. That's a funny name, funny name for the card, though. But hey, that was all. Ooh, blue, white, blue, and black cards. And the next part will cover the rest, and hopefully we won't be quite that long. I think I talked way more than I needed to talk, but well, it's done now. I'm not gonna re-record this. So hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next part. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.